For today's diary in scientific well-being, we've got a couple of follow-up items and also a couple of new items. So follow-up, two of our researchers are proceeding to try and sort out what would be the best way to spend 30 minutes a day in order to have the most positive impact. My own assistant, I've given him the challenge of answering the same question. And I'm going to just turn the music down. So that's most of the, so that's the follow-up stuff. And then the new stuff is a little bit more nebulous. It's mostly been in the brainstorming arena. And so number one has been a website based on the Mandelbrot set, in which you could just zoom in infinitely and keep seeing new details as a way of organizing a website very graphically. And that idea evolved into another idea, which is the idea of creating a Mandelbrot app, which would just be a continuous diving in through the Mandelbrot set, in which you could adjust the colors, but also turn it into a 360 degree. In other words, with the new VR helmets and stuff, that you'd be able to put your phone in and create a 360 degree Mandelbrot set experience. Difficult to justify it on a basis of having the most well-being for the most people, but in a certain roundabout way, one of the things that we need to do is get our consciousness outside of the box that we are in, because as has been famously stated, we cannot solve our human problems with the same level of consciousness that created them. And so, from this perspective, a 360 degree Mandelbrot set where the speed could be speeded up with the accelerometers and slowed down, where the colors could be adjusted either with a couple of different variables, and just go on these wonderful visual journeys. I think it would lead to an altered state. An altered state simply means change. And change in consciousness provides possibility. When you create a change in consciousness, you create a change in what you perceive through the altered state, through the different lens, the different perspective. And this can lead to different ideas. It's only natural. The other idea that I took impulse on, and which has so far kind of crashed in ineptitude, is the idea of doing a website called humanwellbeing.org. And it crashed because I'm in Thailand and GoDaddy will not recognize the fact that I'm American, using an American computer. Even when I change the region to America, GoDaddy just switches it back within less than a second to Thailand. And the translations are so terrible on Google, Thai being a difficult language for translation, that I can't read the thing and see what is available. Though I did note with some cynicism that the extension .love, one, has kind of shown up in my purview of existence, and two, that it is 3 times as expensive as a matter of course than any of the other extensions for domain names. And so in that context, as I say, a little bit cynical that clearly someone has cornered the .love market and decided to sell it at a premium. The cynicism being that, being no different from any other extension, it is purely a calculation that people's hearts will open more about the extension. There's other extensions like .video, .email, .stuff that has no open-heartedness associated with it, so it's just being commercialized. So, you know, that's always a little bit disappointing to find people piggybacking on the energy of a word and turning the word sour, because obviously, as I experienced when I met a young woman on an airplane about a year ago, I asked her, what's your interest in creating a peak experience? Now, anyone who knows what the meaning of peak experience is would say this is a no-brainer. A peak experience is, by definition, one of the best experiences in your life. That's what makes it a peak experience, one of the best in your life, a pinnacle. And she said she wasn't interested in having a peak experience. And what this means, of course, is that the different connotations, the different pollutants that had been adding to the direct meaning of this term, peak experience, left her with such a polluted image, and she wasn't interested in that. She probably had images of men exploiting women because I was a man. She probably had images of trickery because she'd experienced that. She probably had images of, being made to feel stupid about answering the question. So this beautiful concept, peak experience, became basically more polluted than beautiful, despite its dictionary meaning. And I think it's that kind of thing when you as soon as you realize that there's this reverence or, open-heartedness around the word love, and then you corner the market on the love extension, suddenly you realize you're paying 3 to 4 times more for a .love domain than a .com domain, which means that it's actually more of a backstreet domain. Anything, .com being the first is kind of Main Street on the web. .org is, nearby Main Street. and then you get things like the .biz and the .whiz and all that, and those are the back streets of the internet, and so you should be paying less rent for a back street window than a main street window for a storefront. And so anyway, I noted that, and it fizzled out. And the thing that I've been mulling over today, oh yeah, and then one other little bit of stuff. So I did hear back from, what's his name? Anyway, Mr. Abraham, I forget his first name. And he said he was too busy to look into the well-being mathematics. But I thought that I might be able to contribute something worthwhile, because he's quite a distinguished figure. I've seen him play a positive role in alternative educations, in different forms of computing, visual computing and mathematics. Even, I think the first time that I've seen something along the lines of an infinite mathematical set in kind of a Mandelbrot, in kind of a Mandelbrot visualization. It seemed like he had something to do with that kind of initial programming, and so I noticed that his website was pretty terrible, and so I offered to build him a free website where the links worked, etc., etc. And so one of the things that I believe in is that when there are great people who are doing great things, but that are not very commercially viable, and most of the great things I've ever done have no commercial viability. And so I think it's nice to support someone in that kind of effort, to honor them in some way. And so I offered a website, and if he would like to accept it, I will build it for him. And then the thing that I've been dwelling on is this concept of Western women taking control of the resources, scarcity dynamic, and the planetary overpopulation by claiming their power to have either one child or no children. And it was pointed out in one version of many calculations. I say one version because you can make the numbers so flexible. What's very true in any of these numbers is that a Western child consumes significantly more environmental resources than a third or second world child. And so a child in New York City, Upper East Side, is going to, by some estimations, have a 900 times greater demand on environmental resources than a child born in a poor Bangladesh family, and in terms of carbon footprint and things like that. And what that means is one Western child that is not conceived is having the impact of 1,000 children not being conceived. And so I've just been thinking a little bit more about that, and that's an area I may commission a research project And I think that's actually how I'll probably close off the day, is commissioning a research project on the total impact of one American child on the global ecosphere. Because I think that's an important set of numbers and calculations to have, and it may reach towards this project of having the most impact for the least amount of effort, because let's say that you or I were able, with literally 30 minutes of our time a day, to reduce global population within the most resource consuming area of the global population. And you take things like just things like every year a human being in certain countries generates like 30 times their own weight in garbage. You take a statistic like that, and if you reduce one member of that population base, you're just on that one statistic alone eliminating maybe 2 tons of waste every single year. It's an ongoing thing. So I think that's an area that I'll look into in more detail. And that's it for now.